For the longest time, humanity has accepted religious doctrines that claim that sex is sinful. The price we had to pay for the pleasure of sex were the emotions of guilt and shame. This doctrine, perhaps more than any other, has created suffering on a mass scale. For when you damn sex as evil, you damn pleasure as evil. If what is pleasurable and enjoyable to us is evil, then it is clear that we are not worthy of happiness. Inevitably, this belief cripples our self-esteem. In fact, the thought that we are undeserving of happiness and pleasure is so confronting that the only way many people could preserve their self-esteem was to rebel against the idea that sex was sinful and replace it with a new doctrine, one that claimed that sex was inherently meaningless, that it had no significance. We have bodies that can feel pleasure, it feels good to have sex, and that's all there is to it. With this new doctrine, people finally felt free from the religious shaming of our past and reveled in the freedom to enjoy their sexuality in all of its forms and with numerous partners. However, the idea that sex has no deeper significance than the animalistic pleasure of our bodies has never penetrated deep into our psyche. Though we might not be able to explain it, at our core we understand that the sexual act is highly significant. This is why our culture is saturated with sexuality. Books, movies, magazines, and ads. Everywhere you look, there is sex. The truth is that if sex was as meaningless as many claim it to be, it would not occupy so much of our attention. The reality is that the sexual act is of tremendous importance and has far more significance in our lives than most people consciously realize. Let's look at why. Human activity is made up of two basic functions, creation and celebration. Creation is when you are working to achieve something in the future, like a farmer who plants vegetables. Celebration is when you enjoy the rewards of previous creative efforts, like when the farmer eats the vegetables. All of life fits into these two categories. A businessman who works hard is in the creation phase, but his retirement, filled with luxuries and holidays, is in the celebration phase. So which of these categories does sex fit into? Naturally, sex for procreation is creative, but what about recreational sex, sex for pleasure? The proper role that sex should play in a person's life is as a celebration, and yet only a small percentage of the population view sex this way. Let's examine why this occurs. For everything we achieve with creation, we desire a means of expressing that achievement, of celebrating. Material achievements are easy to celebrate. When you learn a new instrument, you can celebrate by playing it. When you build a house, you celebrate by living in it. But what do you do about non-material achievements, spiritual milestones we have reached, development in our character, enriching our personality, improving our self-esteem? How can we celebrate such accomplishments? The answer is sex. For someone with high self-esteem, sex is a pure act of celebration. They are celebrating who they are as a person, their values, their virtues. Naturally, sex is not a solo act and requires a partner. Someone of high self-esteem will want a sexual partner who also has high self-esteem. If affection for yourself is called pride, then affection for another person is admiration. Sex is the act that brings pride and admiration together, unifying them in love. For these two people, sex is a celebration of who they are. Recreational sex may not have an explicit purpose, but it certainly has meaning. It is the ultimate means of self-expression. However, very few people ever experience sex in this way. Too often, sex is viewed as a creation, a means to an end. For many, sex is used as a tool to try and achieve self-esteem. Let's explore this. Intuitively, people understand that someone who is successful, of good character, and high self-esteem will celebrate by having sex with an equally accomplished partner, someone they admire. What many people do is try and reverse this process and use the sex act to create their self-esteem. They might think, if I can have sex with that beautiful person, it will prove that I'm a success. I would be happy if only I could have sex with that person. If that person was my sexual partner, then all of my problems would fade away. Needless to say, this tactic will never work. There may be some pleasure during the sexual act itself, but it is only the drug-like escape afforded by indulging in illusions and fantasy. They may have temporarily numbed their feelings of inadequacy, but once the sexual act is complete, reality hits hard, and people realize that their problems remain, that their self-esteem hasn't been raised, and what is left is an empty, hollow feeling. This is no celebration, but a failed attempt at creation. If you feel depressed, frustrated, or confused after sex, it is a good indicator that you hoped you could achieve the impossible, reverse the natural order of things, and use sex as a tool to boost your self-esteem. In fact, it is common in these situations for people to feel angry with their partner when sex did not deliver the outcome that they hoped for. They unconsciously expected the sex to raise their self-esteem, and when this doesn't occur, they look for someone to blame. The truth is, people wouldn't be so hopelessly preoccupied with sex if it was purely physical pleasure they were seeking. What truly drives sexual obsession is the desire for psychological validation. The insecure man doesn't really want to have sex with lots of beautiful women. The women are a means to an end. What he truly wants is to feel that he deserves to have sex with lots of beautiful women, to feel that he is worthy of them. He wants to feel that he deserves the happiness and pleasure of the sexual act. When sex is used like this, to try and fill a psychological hole, it is not enjoyable. Someone with low self-esteem is unlikely to perform well or desire to have sex frequently. Occasionally, though, low self-esteem can have the opposite effect, with some couples constantly having sex, multiple times a day. Though sex is a wonderful thing, to be enjoyed as often as you desire, if sex has become a compulsion or an obsession in your relationship, it might be worth questioning what kind of psychological validation sex is giving you, and why you need that so desperately. Situations like this, with excessive sexual activity, is most common in new relationships. Before you get to know another person properly, it is common to fill in some of the gaps in your knowledge with some fantasy. By imagining the other person to be confident, sophisticated, and accomplished, it makes your partner's choice to have sex with you more validating for your self-esteem. These illusions and fantasies should pass naturally as the relationship develops and you get to know each other better. They're not something that you should be overly worried about. It only becomes a problem if one person is actively trying to remain ignorant of their partner's true nature. They avoid deep conversations that would reveal their partner's personality because reality is threatening to their illusions and fantasies, which they need to keep alive to stay sexually interested. In extreme cases, some people actively impose their fantasy upon their partner and punish them whenever they act in a way contrary to the image that they've created. This behavior is abuse and is extremely serious. If your partner refuses to see the real you and insists upon a personality they have chosen for you, they most likely have a personality disorder and you need to seek professional advice. A person of high self-esteem who has attracted a partner they admire would not need to indulge in fantasy to become aroused. The closer they look at their partner and the more they know about them, the more meaningful the sex is between them and the more aroused they become. If the truth about your partner is a threat to your sexual desire for them, that is a good indicator that something needs to change. Every relationship is unique. It could be that your partner is amazing and you need to find the courage to discover that. It could also be that you need to seek out someone new, a person you truly admire and who you are excited to get to know. Consider whether your sexual partner is someone you are proud to be seen with in public and introduce to your friends and family. If they're someone that you're embarrassed about or ashamed to be seen with, then you're with someone who isn't right for you, and staying with them will negatively affect your self-esteem. This is never about judgment, but about finding out who you are and where you belong. The most respectful thing you can do in a relationship is to be honest with your partner and honest with yourself. Some people, however, actually prefer a partner that they don't admire because it feels safer to be with someone who needs them. When someone prefers a sexual partner who is insecure and codependent, it's indicative of a low self-esteem. If there is no respect in a relationship, for yourself or your partner, it's unlikely to last. In fact, some people have such a low self-esteem that they automatically have contempt for anyone in a relationship with them. They think, if this person likes me, there must be something wrong with them. I'm so clearly undeserving of love, they must have some other motive for being with me. It does not matter how sincere the affection of their partner is. People with extremely low self-esteem will inevitably sabotage their relationships. And so we see that sex is far from a meaningless experience. Who we engage with sexually has great psychological significance. When considering the implications of this, some people may ask, If sex has such a deep psychological significance, is our culture justified in slut-shaming, in judging people who have had numerous sexual partners? As a basic rule, it is always a good idea to avoid judging other people, if only because your time is better spent thinking about your own choices rather than other people's. However, it is not unreasonable to consider a person's sexual history when judging their suitability as a potential sexual partner, if only because their sexual choices can be a clue to their self-esteem. If someone has been indiscriminate with their previous sexual partners, sleeping with anyone that was available, then this is unlikely to appeal to someone of high self-esteem. They may look at their previous sexual partners and think, if they had sex with all of these people, how can our sexual experiences be special? I want my partner to understand what makes me unique. Is this person capable of seeing the real me? A sexual experience with me is sacred, but I'm not sure this person is capable of appreciating that. That is not to say that anyone is ever justified making judgments about people on such little information as their sexual history. Those choices were in the past, and may be reflective of a personality that has evolved since then, or perhaps their previous partners were all incredible individuals, and their sexual promiscuity was actually an expression of high self-esteem. You won't know unless you make an effort to find out. And so you see why our sexuality is of such great importance and interest to people. Those who claim that sex is meaningless are in denial about what their sexual choices reveal about their psychology and self-esteem. The truth is, sex is an act of great significance, and one of the most essential means of self-expression available to us. Do not diminish your sexuality by using partners as tools to try and achieve self-esteem. Instead, embrace your sexuality and use it to celebrate the fantastic person that you are.